My mom is a teacher. After watching a performance of The Wizard of Oz, the class was playing a game. She got eliminated, and one of the students started singing Ding Dong the Witch is Dead. r/askreddit. Teachers of Reddit, what is the most smart ass response you've heard from a student? During my student teaching to become a special education teacher, I had a 5th grade student complete an entire homework assignment in Roman numerals because he was upset with the math teacher. We checked it over, and it was correct, just completed in the most passive-aggressive way possible. So you gave him a C. This is actually kind of awesome. I thought it was awesome. When I was in 8th grade, I had a science teacher who was unpopular because she didn't know science and couldn't make it interesting. She'd said that atoms and molecules were the same and devoted large amounts of her class to unstructured time reading the textbook. Anyway, the principal came in one day to observe her class because he'd been getting complaints. After he'd left, the class became unruly. To try and quiet us down, the teacher said, "Come on guys, you weren't this rowdy when the principal was here." Mimicking her, I replied, "What conclusions can we draw from that?" She took me outside and started talking to me about respecting her in class. I responded by telling her, "My respect has to be earned." TL. Doctor, I was witness to a student try to frame me for being the student who a real teacher might identify in response to this question. High school English class, teacher calls me to his desk, hands me the essay I typed up, asks me if it's mine. I point at the name and say, "Yeah." And he says, loud, so every other student could hear, "Great, then let me ask you how you have the balls to ask." And he grabbed the papers from my hand, flips to the last page, gets all huffy and says, "The author did a great job, but failed to inform us all that Mr. Dunstan is a wimpy pony boy, and his boyfriend says he can't fuck worth a shit. The only thing he should be teaching is how to fail at life and still live with your mom." As he said it, he kept getting more and more heated, and was going red and flat out yelling by the end. Then he yelled something to the tune of, "Do you think that's funny?" While half the kids in the class were laughing, and you'd had tears in his eyes. And I was horrified, cause I said honestly, "No, I did not write that. Someone else must have added that part and printed it out. Cause we typed them up on the computers in the room. This was so long ago you just turned on the computer and went to it. My essay was saved on the hard drive with anyone else's." Teacher replies, "Sure, yeah, that's likely." And I said, "I typed it over there," and pointed to the computer. So dude strolls over, opens the file Bill Bappa's awesome essay.rtf, and whoever it was erased the whole thing and just left. "Mr. Dunstan is a fucking bitch." I read that immediately and was like, "Oh fuck," and dude reads it out loud. More laughing. The dude stormed out of the room crying. I literally watched the dude break down in front of everyone. I didn't get in any trouble. The department head took over the class from then till the end of semester and knew me, and believe me, it was someone else, and I still have no idea who. Anyways, always felt bad for Mr. Dunstan, and I still do. Teacher was letting us know about a test. One kid asks, "So how long is it?" Another kid chimes in, "That's a really personal question." Not a teacher, but witnessed as a student. There was literally 30 seconds left of class and my buddy starts to pack up. The teacher didn't seem to mind, but when the bell rang and buddy got up to leave, the teacher said the classic line, "The bell doesn't dismiss you, I do," and buddy just continues to leave, gets in the doorway of the class and says, "If it decides when I come, it decides when I leave," and just leaves the class. The hero we need. Not a teacher but the student. My math teacher gave us a problem to answer last year, and when he asked us how we solved it, I just had to answer with math. At a middle school I would ask the kids to get in a straight line. They used to tell me that they're gay, and I'm oppressing them. This was while working with 9-year-olds. We are doing number problems and a kid is having trouble with a sum. The sum is you have 40 sweets. You give half your sweets to your friend. How many sweets do you have now? I grab 40 counters and say to the kid, "Here are 40 sweets. If you give me half, how many will you have left?" Kid turns to me and utterly deadpan says, "I can't give you the sweets. You aren't my friend." Girls walks into class. She was absent the day before. "Mr. Burton, did we do anything yesterday?" Teacher: no, Naveen. We sat in a circle, held hands, and talked about how much we missed you. I teach preschool, and one day a student was acting out a lot. I informed the student they would stay inside with me, while the rest of the class went outside. The kid looked at me, straight-faced, and said, "I'll have my mommy call the cops and arrest you for hurting my feelings." Yep, got threatened by a 4-year-old. A third grader's homework was to define vocab words, and one of them was parent. His definition: adults who own you. Surprisingly profound for a third grader. Lot of potential there for some really sad responses. Well, he's not wrong. I was going over a math quiz with a kid who had a hard time understanding exactly what the questions were asking, and we got to a question that read, "Name the following shape." "Brody, what did you name this shape?" "It's a square." His handwriting was bad, but it obviously did not say square. "No, what did you write down as the answer to this question? What did you name this shape?" I named it after myself. I named it Brody." To a 3-year-old, "When do you turn 4? To me, on my birthday. Why didn't I think of that?" This one reminds me of a 4-year-old I used to care for. Whenever I noticed an airplane flying by, while taking the kids to the park, I would always ask them where they thought the airplane was going. One very smart 4-year-old answered, "To the airport." Back when I taught piano, I advised a young boy to play this until your family is sick of hearing it. He replied, "Oh, that won't take long." I was doing poorly in a middle school class on account of my mother having terminal brain cancer. This one teacher would constantly get on my case, even though he knew about the situation. I wasn't a bad student, I was just severely distracted from the situation at home, and couldn't always focus. I missed 2 days of school due to her worsening condition. The day before she died, he left a voicemail at my house explaining my 5 missing homework assignments, but no one really cared. I didn't go to school for a week after her death, and when I returned I said to him, "Well, now that she's dead I can finally finish those assignments right." I think he finally understood. The principal gave him a good chewing out too. My history teacher would spend half the class making jokes directed at the students. One student in particular always took the jokes on the chin and never really made any comebacks. Eventually, the teacher called him out and jokingly lectured him about standing up for himself. He ended his rant with, "You've gotta be a man. You've gotta be like me." The student replied with, "Well, which one? Do you want me to be a man, or do you want me to be like you?" Edit. For those wondering, this happened back when I was in high school in the late 80s. It's one of those moments I will never ever forget. D. This is one of my favorite stories from high school. I'm not a teacher, but this is a story about my teacher's response to one particular smart-ass answer. So my high school mythology teacher, Mr. D, would have his honors class students help him grade tests from the other classes. He would always require properly spelled right-in answers. No multiple choice for him. So we'd get the tests, he'd read off the answers, and we'd mark them accordingly. One of his questions was, who was the wife of King Minos? Now according to our Greek law, Pasiphae, Minos' wife, was the one who had sex with a bull and gave birth to the Minotaur. So Mr. D tells us that the answer is Pasiphae, and one of the students kinda timidly raises his hand. Mr. D goes, "What you got?" They wrote bull slut." The class breaks into laughter. Mr. D grins and thinks about it a second. I like it. Half credit. That's why he was everyone's favorite teacher. Good sense of humor, and the fact that the answer knew that Minos' wife was the one who birthed the Minotaur meant that at least some of the mental connections were there, so they got credit. Great guy. For context, this was at a Catholic school, and the teacher, a very stern fire and brimstone nun, and the student, an extremely liberal Anglican, had been at each other's nerves all year. After correcting the teacher on something she had gotten wrong, the nun said something along the lines of, "I hope you learn to enjoy the heat, because it's going to be very hot when you end up in the deepest level of hell." And entirely unruffled, without a moment's hesitation, she responded, "Actually, according to Dance Inferno, the deepest level of hell is made of ice, but don't worry, I'll bring a jacket." This is more well timed than smartass, but once in middle school this kid next to me was looking and acting like he was sick and asked to be excused from class. The teacher asked why. The kid was about to respond, but then immediately threw up all over his desk and onto the floor. After a bit of coughing, he looked up and muttered, "That's why." Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and hit that bell button for more videos.